Now, welcome to another edition of Battle of the Heroes and Villains, where this time we'll be taking a look at the results of the poll for Duchess Satine. We'll then compare those results to all the other characters we've done thus far, before I then read and respond to some of your comments. But before any and all of that, just a reminder that you can already head down to nominate and or vote for which character we will do next. Just respond to my pinned comment below with a character name, or vote with a thumbs up if the one you'd like to see is already listed. Whatever single comment gets the most votes in the next 24 hours or so will be the winner and the character we do next. Alright, and now on to the results for Satine, where we'll see that 18% of voters gave her an A, 59% then went with a B, 19% thought she belonged in the C tier, which left 2% to give her a D, and a final 2% to give her an F. And so when we do all the math here and consider A a score of 5 and F a score of 1, that means Satine ends up with an average score of 3.89, which puts her into 31st place overall and 100th of a point ahead of Count Dooku, and just a mere 300ths of a point behind Boba Fett, though it should probably be noted that Boba Fett was done before Season 2 of The Mandalorian, and that we will certainly be re-voting on him after the book of Boba Fett. And now let's move on to some of your comments, but not before once again saying thank you to everyone who votes, comments, and watches these or any of my videos. It is all very much appreciated. Also, a big thank you to everyone who supports this channel over on Patreon. And now let's kick it off, as we always do, with the top-rated comment, which this time came to us from Joshua Wells, who said, "She was a good character, someone to demonstrate how even Obi-Wan once had ideas of leaving the Jedi Order for love. Her desires for peace on Mandalore were genuine, even if her pacifistic views were at times misguided. Her death was not just a loss for Obi-Wan, but to Mandalore society in general. I wonder what would have happened had she lived to see the Empire and yet another war. Solid B." And I think what's great about Satine that you touch on here is that she is much more than just Obi-Wan's ex-girlfriend, you could say. More than just someone in there to kind of be a challenge or a foil to him at times. Instead, though, yes, she is those things, she's very much her own character and would or could stand on her own even without the whole Obi-Wan relationship. And to kind of answer, or maybe I should say ponder your question a bit about what she would do if she survived and had seen the rise of the Empire, well, I think that's hard to say, because she certainly would have seen that what had led to Palpatine being able to rise to power and form the Empire in the first place was the war that she was so opposed to, which may have only further cemented her pacifistic views, led her to further believe nothing good could ever come from war. However, and maybe more interesting for a story, is taking her the other way. Maybe she would have come to believe that sometimes you must or have to fight, especially when faced with a type of tyranny that the Empire presented, because it was kind of, I don't want to say easy, but it was kind of easy for Mandalore to sit out the Clone Wars because they were more of a disagreement between a different faction entirely, not a fight against an overtly evil regime, again, like the Empire was, one that is bent on galactic domination. And so, in an alternate timeline where she lives, I think it could have been interesting to see her perhaps further evolve as a character and eventually support or have Mandalore fight alongside the rebellion. And to go along with what Knut Olderson says in their comment here, it would have been interesting to see her realize there are times when you must stand up and fight simply to survive, or because you can't or shouldn't sit back and allow the existence of literal evil to persist. Which is, of course, the problem with pacifism. It's great in theory, it's great to have this belief that you should never fight, but in practice, it doesn't always work that way. And there's, of course, a classic saying that goes, the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. Alright, and next up here we have this comment from Ethan Baker, who said, "A lot of people seem to bash Satine and her faction, the New Mandalorians. However, I feel Satine is something that would have happened sooner or later to their culture. Satine was a genuinely good person as well, if a bit too over the top with her pacifistic approach, but it's also understandable. Her home has been ravaged by its ancient wars, planets and moons under Mandalorian rule are only recently showing recovery after war and mining operations. The Mandalorians weren't the badasses that everyone loves, but I think it was necessary for Satine to have led the Mandalorians through an era of peace, at least for a time. Did she do a lot of good for them in the long run? No, she didn't. But she was doing what she thought was right for her people and trying to change their future for the better. It's just the fact that she couldn't see her ideology would leave her people open to a worse future. And those are some very interesting points, and I do agree that, especially in a larger society, there will always be movements or attempted movements that come about that want to change things or change everything, even when the status quo is basically working and maybe even working well. I think for better or worse, it's human nature to believe that things can always be changed or fixed or tweaked and that they'll be better another way or a different way, that the grass is greener on the other side, as they say. And it's amazing going along with this. It's amazing to see what people will sometimes give up, and willingly so, in the name of something like safety and security. The prequels, of course, show this beautifully with Palpatine. And so maybe there's a story, almost a reverse story of the prequels in a way, of how and why Mandalore changed or grew weary of war and just wanted peace, why they were willing to, or most of them were willing to, give up their warrior ways and traditions. Maybe we'll even learn about that in the Mandalorian series as it goes on. Because as we can see or have learned in that series, them becoming pacifists led to almost their utter destruction or to the brink of extinction, which is maybe both somehow ironic and fitting. And so, as Lone Battle Droid basically brings up in their comment here, I think there's a very interesting story there with Satine. I mean, was she herself the catalyst of the change in the Mandalorians? And if so, how did she pull that off? How did she change them so drastically? Or did she ride the wave, if you will? Was she just the end of it? Was she just the culmination of something that had been brewing for a long time, perhaps, and only brought about in recent history? One way or the other, I think there's a very interesting story there. And like I said, one that could tie into what is going on in The Mandalorian currently, or in the post-Return of the Jedi era. Okay, moving on now, we have a comment here from Last Fool Killer who said, 2 characters, Duchess and Obi-Wan, who put duty above everything else. We see their struggles to keep their ideals and values in a galaxy full of chaos. I love her ending and what it does for Obi-Wan's character. I just wish we had more episodes with her, because I would love to see her rule when the Empire took power and her thoughts of the Jedi gone. A for me. Next up then, we have this one from Shadow of Hawk 55-1 who said, her role in Obi-Wan's character in the Clone Wars cannot be understated. I'm also really glad she didn't get Star Trekked, i.e. given the whole pacifist thing only to be a pacifist. Instead, she prefers nonviolence but is willing to do it if it is an absolute must. Along with that, her death is the seventh saddest moment in Clone Wars for me personally, and her inclusion gave a good insight into the Mandalorian people as well. Hopefully someday we'll get a prequel series with her and young Kenobi on the run from Jango Fett and the other true Mandalorians, but time will tell. Also here we have a comment from Veridad who said, I felt she was an excellent character. Her attempt at leading Mandalore to peace was admirable. Her romance with Obi-Wan was also a cool addition to the canon that helped shape Obi-Wan as a person. Since she only appeared in a handful of episodes, I have to give her a B. Also here we have a comment from Kyle Bittner who said, she provides good depth to Obi-Wan's character and an overall nice addition to the Star Wars universe with her introducing the independent systems to the Clone Wars. And of course her death is one of the best moments in the Clone Wars, with the emotion in the scene between her, Obi-Wan, and Maul. And for me, I don't know where exactly I'd rank Satine's death, but it was certainly one of the saddest and most shocking in the show. It really hits you. And I love that Obi-Wan manages to stay calm and keep his composure, even though he does love her dearly. And of all the moments in the series, none I think shows the contrast between Obi-Wan and Anakin better than this one, because you know what happens if that's Padme being killed in front of Anakin by Maul. He would have lost his frickin' mind. And so, though yes, as said before, Satine was more than just this way to add more to Obi-Wan's character. She is her own character, and there could be a heck of a story left to tell with her past and what really happened to Mandalore, why they changed their ways, and so on. And so yes, a great character in her own right, but what she does for the character of Obi-Wan, and by extension for Anakin, is probably the best part of her character, though. I mean, I love this idea that Obi-Wan was essentially put in the same situation as Anakin, where they both had to go off and personally protect an important and royal and good-looking young woman around their age, and that they both developed feelings and loved these individuals, and they loved them back, and that Kenobi would have left the Order for her had she asked. But When push comes to shove, and whereas Anakin basically puts being a Jedi secondary to his love for Padme, Obi-Wan, once he makes that commitment, he is a Jedi first and foremost and above all else. He didn't let losing Satine destroy him the way even just the thought or having visions of losing Padme basically led Anakin to the dark side, or was what Palpatine essentially uses to push him over the edge. Again, through Satine, we get to see many similarities between Obi-Wan and Anakin, between their backstories and who they are as people that they do love. But we also get to see the one big thing that separates them, which was where the devotion truly lay. Alright, now time for just a few final comments before wrapping this one up. Starting with this one from PixarFan95, who said, "Finally, I've been waiting for you to cover her. Satine is a great character, not only because she's an excellent foil to Obi-Wan, being the only one who can truly match him in a battle of wits, but also because she's a great leader and a good example of a female character done right. She rejects the violent warrior ways of her people's past and tries at all costs to maintain peace. Her only downside is that her pacifist tendencies tend to prevent her from resorting to violence when necessary. In many ways, and I know this may be a bit controversial, but I feel like she's a better version of Padme in the sense that they governed over their own planets and were excellent politicians. What makes Satine a better character, though, is her personality. Satine oozes sass and charm, presenting herself as the tough but kind character. This, along with many other factors, cement her as a well-rounded individual with a personality, unlike many of today's quote-unquote strong female characters. For these reasons and more, I give Satine a B+. Also, she and Obi-Wan are the best Star Wars couple. Change my mind." Next up then, we have this one from JRojo115, who said, "It was good to see that Obi-Wan had a love interest in his past, and yet both had different outlooks of the war. The Clone Wars did a good job showing that even with the different views, they still care for each other. Her final words to him were, 'I loved you always, I always will.' Overall, solid B+. Then there's this one from Javier Ramirez, who said, "Aside from adding to Obi-Wan's love interest and Bo-Katan's sister, she was an interesting character who did her best as a ruler of Mandalore. Her death was very tragic. I just wish we got to know her a little more. Solid B." Moving on then, this one from Jack Simpson, who said, "She was a secondary character who served mainly as a love interest for Obi-Wan. They could have left it at that, yet they managed to make her a three-dimensional character who had ideals and values that grated against the reality of the Clone Wars. I honestly think she might be a better character than Padme, even with her limited screen time." Then there's also this comment from Nick Vegas, who said, "Good character, would love to see the history between her and Obi-Wan play out on screen somewhere." Also this one from Skylar M, who said, "D, because to be honest, I had to think a few moments to remember her. And I've seen Clone Wars several times through. Bo-Katan is miles better, and yes, I realize Bo had more time to develop, but from the start she was better. Satine was far more damsel in distress during her screen time. She had more victories, but let's be real, Bo is a badass and Satine was snooze." Also here we have this comment from The Fake Soups, who said, "Any character that makes Obi-Wan better is an excellent character. B." Then this one from Veterlit Torf, who said, "To me, she's an insult to Mandalorian culture." And finally, we have this comment here from Leah Love, who said, "A, I have literally been waiting for her to come up in your poll. Most will regulate her to Obi-Wan's girlfriend, but she is so much more than that. Around 18 to 19, she assumed the rule over Mandalore as a pacifist. She then went on to represent over 1,500 star systems. She did all of that with diplomacy and very little, if any at all, military force. This is a complete 180 from what we know of Mandalorian history. She was incredibly passionate and did not always have control over her emotions, which made her even better. Where Padme always seemed cool and collected, Satine was never afraid of wearing her heart on her sleeve. In her tenure, she changed not only a planet for the better, but united hundreds of star systems and kept her ground when the Republic tried to acquire them. She survived several assassination plots, unfortunately succumbing to the final one. Even then, she held onto her principles, and her last words were of love and not hate or revenge. This is all without being Obi-Wan's true love, but the fact that she is the one person that made him question his identity and seriously pondered giving up everything for her shows that she was never a passing fancy, And while I hold many headcanons regarding their relationship, the truth of the matter was that Obi-Wan always considered his life almost perfect because they could not share a life together. But in regards to being Obi-Wan's true love, let's address the huge connection to American cinema that she references. While most Star Wars fans knew Ewan McGregor from The Phantom Menace, the world got to know him as Christian from Moulin Rouge, who falls in love with a beautiful courtesan by the name of Satine. The trajectory of both stories are almost identical, to the point that social media busted down Dave Filoni's proverbial door demanding answers. The story goes that he went to Satine's creator and asked about it. The creator denied any knowledge of the movie musical, which impossible since it changed fashion, music, and movie trends for the next couple of years and earned Nicole Kidman her first Golden Globe. To which Dave Filoni even went, "I find that suspect." If you haven't seen the movie, watch it. I dare you to say that Obi-Wan and Satine weren't living the bohemian lifestyle when they were younger. She is my favorite character in the whole of Star Wars. She is the sole reason my friends were able to get me to watch the Clone Wars at all. She is and will forever be my Duchess. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you think of Duchess Satine, or what you think of what I or anyone else had to say about her here in this video. Or you can feel free to nominate and or vote for which character we do next. Either way, take to the comments below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.